I'm Sherine Onukwuwe. Coming up next on the St. Paul Forum, we're talking with Carolyn Smith and Louise Ortega about adoption and foster care. Join us. Hi, thank you for joining us at the St. Paul Forum. I'm delighted to welcome our guests today, Carolyn Smith and Louise Ortega from the Permanent Family Recruitment Project of Ramsey County. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Well, first let's talk about the importance of adoption and who some of those kids are that need to be adopted and the vulnerabilities, vulnerable communities maybe that are most in need to find kids to find permanent homes.
Okay. Well, first of all children need loving, permanent families to help them grow to be productive members of society. The children that we're currently serving at Ramsey County are the children who have been through child protection, and as a result were not able to be reunited with their birth families, and so they have been freed for adoption. So they're coming from various kinds of backgrounds, some neglect, some may have been abused, and that sort of thing. We're specifically focused on finding permanent homes for African American children, children who are Hispanic Latino, and also children who are older youth. And we are also focused on, of course, finding families for large sibling groups.
Mm-hmm. And Louise, can you talk a little bit about what maybe is culturally specific to Latino communities, of maybe what some of the situations may be that children that are kind of new situations that children find themselves in need of adoption as well?
I'm not.
Well, if you can talk about what maybe some of the things that might be different from African American, or might be different from among circumstances in which children find themselves needing to be adopted.
Well, one that comes to mind in my short time with the project is, that I've learned about sort of the issues around children who might be undocumented and an extra procedure that has to be responded to so they are able to be adopted and stay in this country. So that might be probably the most unique, besides just the simple language issues with other language groups would have if the children didn't speak English, and finding an adopted family that will be able to communicate with the child will be another area that's probably different than African American families.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah.
And the Hispanic Latino children also bring a different set of cultural values and norms, and we want to make sure that when we're recruiting families that we recruit families who reflect their ethnic and racial diversity. And so there may be things like music, food, different kinds of customs and events that may be important to them, and we want to make sure that we honor their culture.
Mm-hmm. And given that the whole reason maybe that this project exists is that there's not enough families to reflect that.
Yes.
So in the case that, there's the argument that, kids just need love.
Yes.
What do you think the solution is, I guess, if a family who is not culturally reflective of that child, what is the solution for them to make sure that the child is able to connect with their community and identity?
Okay. Well, first let's talk a little bit about the project. Mm-hmm. Okay. We were awarded this federal 5-year demonstration project to increase our pool of foster and adoptive families who are reflective of the race and ethnic diversity of the children in foster care and those who are in need. Okay, because that's where we're having some challenges. We have about 55% of our children who are African American, yet they represent only about 11% of the total child population in St. Paul. And then we have the Hispanic Latino children who are the fastest growing population in our state. And when we look at our pool of foster and adoptive families, we do not have the supply for the demand. So we do not have families who look like those children. And of course, then we have the older youth. And it's important that we maintain children's cultural values and norms because, I mean, after having experienced the loss of your biological family and maybe breaking ties with them, it is even more difficult for them if we place them in an environment where their culture is not honored and people aren't familiar with what's important to them in terms of their value system and their beliefs. And so we're really targeting the African American community, the Hispanic Latino community, and then of course families who are interested and able to care for older youth because the older youth are the hardest to find adoptive families for. Yes, and while we're recruiting adoptive families, we're also recruiting foster families because we understand that about half of the families who provide foster care, they sometimes or overwhelmingly end up adopting our children.
What are some of the requirements for, well, first foster families, and then we could talk about adoptive care as well?
Well, it doesn't cost anything to obtain a license, but all of our foster and adoptive families are required to be licensed, right? Okay. So they have to be licensed to provide foster care and or adoption. And what that entails is completing an inquiry, okay? So just calling, contacting the agency, and let it be known that you're interested in fostering or adopting. And then they'll be invited to an informational meeting, and from there's a training session for them. And then once they complete that application process, they will be assigned a worker who will come out and conduct a home study. And based on that home study, if there are no challenges with their background, because they are required to complete a criminal background study and must be clear. Sometimes that could be a barrier, but sometimes it isn't. It just depends. So I would encourage anyone interested in becoming foster or adoptive licensed that they contact the county, and then we'll kind of navigate them through the application process. But once the home study is completed, then there usually is a license granted. And then after that, family is ready to receive a placement. And
what about adoptive parents? What are some of the requirements for that?
About the same, actually. But for adoptive parent, I think the one thing that is really important is that they be able to make a lifelong commitment to a child. So they're going to be the forever family for the child. And for foster parents, they are deemed to be temporary. And we also have this new model of foster and adoption care called concurrent permanency planning. Some foster parents are able to be, foster parents, and at the same time, they can agree to be the child's permanent family if reunification efforts fail. So if that child becomes free for adoption, we don't want that child to have to move. And so we have a group of foster parents who agree from the onset that they will provide foster care and also be the child's adoptive family in case reunification efforts fail. First, I must mention, though, we are required by law that we first consider relatives for a child's placement for foster care and adoption. But the requirements are that, they be willing to provide the child with love and with structure and that lifelong commitment, and just go through the application process. And then once they receive a child in their care, they'll have 3 months in which to get used to the child and have the child get used to them, and then we can move toward adoption finalization.
Okay. Luis, can you talk about your interest in this project as a consultant? You were brought in as of December, fairly new. So what was your interest in becoming part of the recruitment project?
Well, part of my interest actually was sparked by I do a little teaching in a college and talk about multiracial issues, multicultural issues, and one area that I introduced quite by luck, if you will, was that's not the right word, but the issue of adopted kids and their cultural background and identity. We were going through cultural identity papers, and little by little I kept on noticing there was at least 1 or 2 adopted children in my classroom. So that became part of my classes to make sure to bring up the issue of adopted children and self-identity and how that affects them. And so with that spark, if you will, when this RFP came out, I was interested in learning more about the issue around adoptions, and particularly connecting children with similar cultural background families, and that's what sparked my interest.
Okay. Now, Carolyn, you mentioned that the project may be ending or short term.
Yes.
What do you think that the need for this project will go away?
No. As a matter of fact, I think that based on what we have learned and demonstrated through this project over the last 4.5 years, we know that diligent recruitment efforts need to continue. And also some of the systems changes that we've made need to continue. So we have written a sustainability plan, and we're right now engaging our upper administrators at Ramsey County to, hopefully support and fund that sustainability plan as much as possible. A lot of the efforts that we have done, we have integrated into the day-to-day work of the county system. And so, but yeah, the need won't go away. It will continue, because what's happening is that a lot of foster and adoptive parents are coming forward, adopting and caring for children. Many of them, after they adopt, then they fall out of our pool, and so they're no longer available to accept children. So we have to continually replenish our pool, to make sure that we have families that are available for foster care and adoption for our children.
Why are they not able to reconnect? I mean, why is the agency not able to reconnect with those parents who have adopted, other children?
Well, we can't. A lot of times they have limited capacity, to care for children. Because, for instance, we may have a family who come forward who ends up adopting like 3 children. And once that adoption is finalized, then they're no longer interested in adopting any other children or doing foster care, because they've reached their capacity and limit for the family size and resources and that. So that's what happens all the time. A lot of times it's true of relatives. When we recruit relatives, for foster care and adoption, if they end up adopting that child, then once they, finalize, then they fall out of the pool. So we need to continue to replenish our pool of families all the time. And that's what the project is really all about, is the diligent recruitment for children of color in particular, because children of color are overrepresented in our child welfare system, in foster care, and also among those who are free for adoption.
What might be some of your plans or examples of outreach plans or activities that you execute or implement to get these families interested in adoption or foster care?
Yes, okay. Well, we have done what's called a public awareness campaign, and we've cast a wide net, meaning that we've done general recruitment, we've done targeted recruitment, and we've done child-specific recruitment. And what some of those activities look like is that we have produced a lot of flyers, brochures, all kinds of handouts, to give families information about adoption and foster care, and we have made sure that we are visible in the communities, like at community events. We will stage a booth, and we'll entertain people to our table and give them information and talk about the need, that sort of thing. And we've made presentations at churches. We've also done public service announcements. We've done newspaper ads. We've done a number of TV commercials. And we also have partnered with our existing foster and adoptive families, and they have been putting on like recruitment parties where they invite their friends and families over, and then one of us, representatives from the county, comes over and talk about the need for foster and adoption care. That's some of what we've done.
If you're just joining us, thank you for watching St. Paul Forum. I am here today with Carolyn Smith and Luis Ortega, and we're discussing adoption and foster care. I also, a lot of people, when they think about adoption, or maybe think about the gloom and doom of a child trying to find a home and how difficult that is. But do you all have any success stories that you could talk about? A kid who did find a family, a permanent home, and it worked out well, and maybe even gained a couple of brothers and sisters, in the process.
Yes. Yeah, there are a number of them, as a matter of fact. We highlighted the 3 stories of success for children back during our National Adoption Day event, which is a big public awareness event that we sponsor every year from Ramsey County. And I'll tell you about one particular young man who at the time was 14. He had been waiting for a permanent family for a number of years, probably 2 or 3 years or so. And one day while at the mall with his foster parent, he ran into somebody that he thought he knew, and actually it was. His grandfather was a security guard at the mall. And so the grandfather recognized him, and they connected on the spot. And about a year, maybe 15 months later, that grandfather adopted his grandson. That's one such success story. Then we had a family or a sibling group of 6, okay, who was, really wanting to stay together as siblings, but the chances of that happening, finding a family who can, welcome and make a commitment to care for 6 children at one time. Can you imagine that? That's very difficult sometimes. So, but anyhow, there was a family who stepped up and adopted all 6 of those children, and they were all older youth. They ranged in age from 10 up until 17.
Wow.
Yes. And so there we had another young lady who was 14 also, who was adopted during National Adoption Day, who had been waiting 8 years for a permanent family. And she had been separated from her brother, who was adopted about 5 years before her adoption. So we've had a number of success stories like that over time.
And I didn't ask you, Carolyn, why are you interested in the work that you do?
Well, I'm a child welfare advocate. Adoption became my passion over the years. I worked for Ramsey County for a number of years, as I said earlier, and I was the adoption supervisor for 8 years prior to becoming the project manager for this project. And I knew that so many children wait for long periods of time, and that family is so important to all children. And so I wanted to be a part of that vision to find a permanent home for every child. And that's where that statement came from. The overarching goal that we have of a permanent home for every child is that vision. It was a vision to find families for kids. So that's why. And I have a love, of course, for all children. But I especially know that for children of color, it's very difficult to find families, and so there's a need, fill it. That's what I was taught, and so it's a very worthwhile job and need that I'm filling.
Certainly. How do you think that other states, compared to Minnesota, what's the comparison in how many kids are needed, or how many children are in adoption or are up for adoption, looking to be adopted, compared to the percent in Minnesota?
Yeah. Well, that's a real difficult question to know, but I can tell you this, is that there is a national campaign to recruit and retain forever families for children who are waiting for adoption. And so that speaks to the need all over the country, because they've put a lot of time and resources into funding opportunities, with counties and states to help increase, the adoptions for children. And in our county, for instance, there's about 145 children right now who are waiting to be adopted. And then in our state, we have over 300 children who are waiting to be adopted. And one of the things that's unique about our state is that we pay better rates or higher rates for foster parents than we do adoptive parents, and that's been a disincentive. And just recently, I know it's been something that's been publicized in the news, is that Governor Dayton and some of the other advocates are really advocating for us to equalize the rates that we pay foster and adoptive families, so that we won't have that disincentive. So, but other states sometimes, don't have that kind of inequality or difference between what you can, the funding that you have available for foster parents rather than adoptive parents.
Well, tell me a little bit about the process of adopting. So we talked about, that parents would need to, or prospective parents would need to go through training just like foster care parents. What is some of the training?
Okay.
What would they, expect when they attend these trainings?
Okay. Well, first let me tell you that it's important to know that in order to apply for a foster care license, you're required to be at least age 21. And you do not have to be married. You can be married or single. You do not have to own your own home. You can be renting. And you just really need to be able to, have an open heart and willingness to care and provide love and structure for a child. And then once you make that inquiry, there is that process whereby we will just talk to you and invite you to what we call our nuts and bolts, meeting. And so they're talking about everything that's required. They look at the home, they look at your background, they look at your qualities, your experience, and things like that. And then based on that, if you're still interested, then you're referred on to an orientation meeting. And so they give you more information about the needs of the children and the backgrounds of the children and that sort of thing, and kind of what you can expect. There's ongoing training. For this project, we developed our own training curriculum, customized based on the needs of the foster adoptive parents that we surveyed. And so we have 6 modules in our curriculum, and that training looks like how to help children achieve educational success, how to help prepare a child for a permanent home, how to work with a child who has like various mental health disorders, which many of our children may have, such as a reactive attachment disorder, one that jumps out at me, and that sort of thing, because their attachment to their family of origin has been broken a lot of times. And and then we have one on concurrent permanency planning. We have another one, trying to remember all 6, on, let's see, did I say healthy sexual development? Yeah, that's another one. So there's ongoing training, but in addition to the training that we have developed, based on this project, there's other training that our state Department of Human Services also offer to our foster adoptive families.
Okay. And Luis, is there something that has impacted you while you've been, although it's been a short time, while you've been doing the work with the recruitment project, just any particular thing that's impacted you?
Well, what's impacted me is that it's not been an easy thing to do in terms of getting the information out to the Latino community. Mostly we've been, as Carol mentioned, we've done some churches, mostly a lot trying to reach out to the churches and trying to get the information out there. So it's might not be as a familiar topic within the Latino community, and so that's been, people are willingly open to listening to me, but trying to get out and getting like a good number of people to listen and to reach out. But I'm also learning that folks are interested, but the process is something that is stopping them from continuing. So I've been able to then at least offer that information that there is help to help them get through the process, and that's been slowly beginning to open doors, and it takes time. And you're right, I'm a little limited in my participation because it has been a new experience for me as well, and just trying to get out there and keep knocking on doors and getting folks to listen. To listen about this topic, which is going to be growing. I mean, the demographics of the Latino community in St. Paul, people are aware of it, but these issues are just coming to the surface. So we're going to be needing to keep on doing the work even after the project is over, as Carolyn mentioned.
And would you say that the Latino families now have been maybe participating in some way in adoption, maybe in a non-traditional
right.
idea?
We have the word criados, which is, we take folks into the home and typically don't worry about the paperwork, be it a nephew or a niece or a close friend, And that very much comes sort of from the old country. You know, if somebody needs a place to stay, they have a place to stay. So introducing them to this formality, which actually could be a great benefit to them because of the extra support services that they would be receiving from the county in this particular case, would probably be quite helpful. So it's an added feature, obviously, when we talk to the families about the support systems before and after the process.
Mm-hmm. And Carolyn, what do you hope, that the project can achieve by its end, or hopefully in continuation?
Yeah. Well, we've seen some progress so far, in particular with the placement stability for children. If there's homes available who are willing to do both foster and adoption care, right, then the children don't have to move. That's good for the children overall, okay? Because can you imagine how it would be to have to keep moving from home to home, and you never know, who's going to make that commitment. And so we've been able to identify a number of homes and families for children so that they don't have to keep moving. And then we've also seen the length of time that children wait to find a permanent family, okay, decrease. And so we've seen an uphill climb with that, and we're hoping to continue. We are having some challenges with, of course, finding all of the families that we would like to come forward to get a license and be available for adopted children. So that's just going to be an ongoing challenge that we're going to have to keep addressing. And so we're hoping that we can sustain our training curriculum. We've had some really good feedback on our training for curriculum. We have one of our own former foster adoptive parents who is facilitating that training, which is really valuable to them because she knows, their experience and can readily be available to talk about the challenges she's faced, with caring for children. And she's also adopted children. So we were hoping to sustain that, and we developed a customer service model with, various standardized standards for how you respond and follow up with families who are making inquiries and are interested in the process.
Okay. Well, why don't you give us some information? How would someone who's interested in adoption or foster care get in touch with you all, whether via website? So what do they do?
Okay. Well, they can start by calling our 266 KIDS line. And that number again is 651-266-KIDS. And there will be a prompt to direct them to a person who will accept their inquiry and get them started in the process.
Okay. And
that's one thing. We also have a website presence, and I think the easiest way to find our website is probably to use Google and Google Ramsey County Adoptions, and then from that page should be a link to the Permanent Families Recruitment Project, which will talk a lot more about our project.
Well, thank you. You've been watching the St.
You're
Paul
welcome.
Forum. You can also watch us online at www.spnn.org. Until next time.